Okay. So this is our student org workshop for advisors. We are really excited to have you all working with our many student orgs on campus, whether you're new to advising, been doing it for years and years, or maybe you're working with different groups this year. We're really lucky to have you, and we just want to take the time to thank you for your participation in this effort. It's definitely a team approach. We also appreciate that you're taking the time to learn the rules and the policies because the students lean so heavily on you all to get their events approved and bounce ideas off of. So for those of you who I have not yet met, my name is Ray Flannery, he, him. I'm the Assistant Director for Student Organizations, and I'm joined on this call by my colleague, Blake, who can introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Blake Girdler. I'm the new Student Involvement Coordinator at OSI. If you've worked in the past with student orgs, you may remember Jill Finch or seen her name pop up. I'm taking over her role. She's moved on to a different department, so I'm going to try to step into those rather large boots.
So between Blake, myself, and Dustin Lewis, the three of us kind of round out support that student organizations will see throughout the year. And we're really glad to be serving so many wonderful student leaders. So this slideshow is meant to overview kind of really the policies and practices that we want to see year after year. Most of this is the same as what we had in place last year, but some of it is new content. So we just want to get everyone up to speed. This is the rest of the faces on our OSI team. We're sort of sprinkled throughout the Gallagher Student Center. We have several proud alums of Xavier University among us, which is great. And we have some fresh faces this year too, which is exciting as well. We also lead with our mission. When we presented these slides to the students, this is the same slideshow that we've shared with them all now at workshops. We really wanted to anchor this in our mission, which is that we believe through involvement, individuals discover their passions and develop their strengths to lead a purposeful life. We want to anchor our mission in the work because we know each organization on campus has a mission statement. We want student leaders to reflect on that, think about it, and also figure out how they come into play with our mission as the leaders on campus as well, kind of hitting on this third component of our mission statement. We also highlight, just in a very quick sense, many of the programs and services that the Office of Student Involvement covers. We have a lot of touch points with students on campus from their experience as a new student during orientation, all the way really through that stage at commencement. We want to make sure students expect where they're going to see our team popping up and how we can be of resource and support to them throughout the year. So this is just kind of a high-level, bite-sized overview of some of the services we provide and where our areas of expertise lie. When we gathered students to talk about our training, we wanted to kind of set the stage for a successful year and establish norms for becoming a strong student organization. What we don't want is a bunch of student orgs that are really just filler or not meeting or officer roles that help students pad their resumes but don't actually contribute to the campus life. What we instead ask for is that students really take an active role in shaping their own experience on campus. So having events where there's not just free food, but there's actually an agenda or a plan to go off campus or do something exciting or interesting together to bond as a group. We also expect that student orgs do meet regularly throughout the year, not just at club day and maybe once at the final exam season. We also want students to understand that they have to communicate with us just as much as we, reciprocate that in their way. So we want them to be checking emails. We want them to be looking on EngageXU, seeing the progress of things they've submitted, right? It's a team-based approach. We want them to be really the driving force, but also, responding to you all as advisors and making sure that they make the time to accommodate your needs and working to essentially have regular contact. We also ask that student orgs be engaged. We want them to think about how their role fits into campus as a whole, how they can help their own fellow students have a great experience. And lastly, helping students already think ahead. We know it's only the first couple weeks of the fall semester here, but boards will transition at some point this year and there will be new officers. So how will they be better positioned to really lead the charge? We offered some new workshops last school year for transitioning officers, both incoming and outgoing. We plan to continue that series. They seemed to be helpful to give some students some handoff. So we're going to bring that back closer to the end of the fall. We also wanted to highlight some responsibilities that we think fit the different roles that each organization is required to have. Now, student orgs can have multiple people serving in each role. They can also have additional roles, but we asked for at least one advisor, one president, one VP, and one treasurer. So presidents, in our eyes, are really like the spokesperson for each organization. They delegate the responsibilities, they look at sort of the arc of the organization, what are the big events that are on the docket, and so on. They're also supposed to be able to speak for the mission of the group and understand the history as well. Then the vice presidents are really second in command, being able to step in at a moment's notice to become president, but also helping with specific responsibilities too. We suggest maybe tackling the recruitment piece or outreach, especially if your organization doesn't have somebody managing social media or even just secretarial duties. Maybe a vice president could handle some of those compliance things or meeting minutes, things like that. And then treasurers have a much more technical role, but a really vital role to play as well, because they're not only managing the books for the organization, but they're also helping to form and pitch the budget, caution the group on what the spending policies are and how they can and cannot spend the money, and really making sure students understand how they can meet their org goals when it comes to spending down the money they were given and putting it to good use. We also wanted to give a quick plug here that this upcoming Sunday is our Student Org Academy. So this is a chance for presidents and treasurers from every organization to really get a deep dive on what it takes to be a leader. We're going to go over much more in-depth sessions from travel to apparel ordering. Students can kind of self-select into the session of their choice throughout that day. And it's sort of like a mini conference. We host it in Cintas every year as sort of a follow-up to this workshop, which is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. So students from your groups should have all registered. We asked 2 attendees to come, and if they don't, we will ask them to hold on all operation until we get them the knowledge that they need just in terms of best practices and our policies. So again, it's a great chance for them to bond with other officers, network, and also really get the most relevant content for their organizations. Since we're also gathering advisors here, we wanted to share what your role should be or how we view you as teammates in this work. So we tell students that their advisor should be somebody who's active, right? Not just sitting on the sidelines, but really taking a role in helping shape the vision of what the group needs to be doing, holding them accountable when necessary, but also not taking the reins from the students either, right? Advisors shouldn't be spending money on behalf of the organization without prior approval, nor should you be micromanaging. Likewise, you shouldn't only be clicking the approve box in EngageXU whenever a form or event gets created or submitted. We need you to do your part and log in there and really move those things along, but we also acknowledge that that is only one piece of the advisement. We know that you all might choose to chaperone a group if they're traveling, though you're certainly not obligated to. Students just may need to find a substitute chaperone if that is something that is in their plan. And we like to consider that you all are sort of the first resource for your student officers. Many of you have the most innate knowledge of either your students or your organizations for years and years. And so helping kind of students navigate what they should be doing at any given time throughout the year, when your big events take place, things like that. And then student involvement team, we are really here to serve as an intermediary, as a backup. We want these groups to be running efficiently, but we also know that sometimes there's a lot of questions that even you all can't answer, and we're happy to jump in as well. Now I'm going to hand things over to Blake to talk over some of our financial policies and best practices.
Alrighty, so this is everything we're going to look over today. We primarily, I would say a lot of these you're not going to be touching as advisors, but we do want to highlight a few of these policies, just like as Ray said, as you're approving, you're at least aware of them. And there are some cases where you may handle some finances as well. So first of all, for context, we like to give this to all of our officers and advisors to let them know they all pay into this activity fee. They pay $140 a semester as full-time students. We let them know this because it is only undergraduate students that pay this fee. So we want clubs to be for and by undergrads. It's totally fine if an organization wants to let a grad student like come to an event or whatnot, but they shouldn't be officers and they shouldn't be the primary focus for our student orgs. We do have some graduate clubs as well, but that's handled through the graduate school. Different story there. Um, every club has their own individual fund number. It starts with 81. It's typically an 815 or an 816 number. This may be something that never comes across any forms you submit, but it is just, again, helpful for context when submitting all these financial forms that your officers know their fund number, don't put the wrong one in, so we don't, mess up where our money's coming from and going to. You may never look at this in your life, but this is what the accounting book looks like on EngageXU. A few things we like to note about it is it only displays what funds have been officially posted by the university. So sometimes that's really quick. A lot of the times it's not. So we say the treasurers should probably be holding on to a much more accurate and up-to-date list, probably through like Excel or whatnot. But this does give you a good look overall how the club is doing. But it isn't something that should be solely relied on as it can be delayed. A few policy points for spending and purchasing. 2 weeks. You're going to hear us say 2 weeks a lot for a lot of different policies, but that is what we require for most of our forms to be put through, including our purchase forms. It's just so we have enough time. A lot of time it's going to go through a lot quicker than 2 weeks, but it is a good buffer zone. A lot of the times if it is submitted past 2 weeks, it's an automatic rejection, or it's going to get sent back and say it needs to be updated to be 2 weeks out. But we can't guarantee anything shorter than 2 weeks. Likewise, purchases over $500. So if you're planning big events that require a lot of big purchasing, we would probably say even before 2 weeks for that, because the university will only review purchases. I don't know the exact time, but they only do it once a week. So if it's submitted really early or right before an event, it's not even going to get through because the university won't have looked at it. One big note that we've seen a few issues with it this year so far. We have our own Amazon Prime account that we purchase through Amazon Business. So if officers want to make their own purchases on Amazon, we can't reimburse that because we have our Amazon in place. If they want to make Amazon purchases, they submit it to me and I go shopping for them on our account. Gift cards, lots of nuance with gift cards, but generally $50 or for individual gift cards and $500 maximum for one event. Thank you gifts. I hate doing the finances for you all because I have to tell you this. We have a policy against buying thank you gifts for advisors. That's in a slew of policy that all comes from the fact that only undergraduate students pay into that activity fee. So we want it to be 100% going to undergrad experience. That's why we also limit student thank you gifts to just very small $25 maximum purchases for like graduating seniors or something like that, because we don't want these club funds just going to an item that gets taken home and never seen again. We want it to be going towards experience for all the students that are paying into it. $140 a semester is not cheap, so we want to make sure that they're getting an actual return on that. That's why we also don't allow orgs to purchase regalia most of the time for graduating seniors, because, again, we just don't want that activity fee going to something that's only going to benefit one small group of membership, like graduating seniors. Again, to keep things going towards experience, we want to limit apparel purchasing as well. It's totally fine to go out and purchase apparel. Everyone likes to rep their club. But per year, we want to keep that apparel spending to $35 per student. We'll get into it later. There is a way to get around that, and that is through fundraising. Fundraising, or any amount of dollars that you have fundraised, there's a lot less strings attached. So if you want to go beyond $35 per student, it needs to be fundraised dollars, not activity fee dollars. We have our own partner companies. We'll get into that later as well. But for equipment, things like tents, coolers, Ray, you can go to the next slide. All these kinds of things, we have these for free at OSI or other places around campus. So we don't want, club funds going to hundreds of dollars for a Yeti cooler when we have a cooler ourselves. That's to keep spending down. It's also, we don't want someone to buy a really nice, I'll keep with the example, Yeti cooler, and it stays in a senior's house off campus. They graduate and it disappears. That happened all the time. So we just try to limit these things. There are some exceptions, but generally, if there's event equipment that's needed, someone has it on campus for free. This is my favorite rule because it affects me directly. So all orders for pretty much anything come directly to me at my desk. I have a table behind my desk that I keep all the orders on. It's not the biggest table ever. So if you do get an email, I tend to CC advisors on those emails just so you all can help keep your students accountable. Typically, it won't be the role of the advisor to pick it up. But I do ask that once I send that email, 48 hours, that item leaves that table. Either an advisor picks it up or an officer, most likely an officer picks it up. But you'll notice those emails from me, you'll get CC'd on those. 2 weeks again for P-card purchases, purchase requests. We have P-cards, university credit cards in our office, and there's plenty of times where students will need to use those for org purchases, but those need to be placed 2 weeks in advance as well. Moving on to the forms, the purchase form, we have 4 forms. There are 4 financial forms that student orgs will be filling out for different circumstances. Again, a lot of these will not go, you won't be filling these out. There are some cases where you might, but again, we just want you to be aware of these. So when they do come across you all first, once they submit them, you are the first approver, you know what they are. So purchase forms tend to be the catch-all purchase. It's the catch-all purchase form. So for Amazon purchases, for example, it goes through this. They just submit their cart in the form itself, and I go shopping for them. It's how they request a P-card, like I just said. They can pay vendors that are set up in our system through this form. The only thing it really can't do is pay students. There's a different process for that. Once again, 2 weeks in advance. The student payment advance form. This one gets confused a lot for P-card forms, so we try to separate it. This is the form that students fill out to request what is called a Focus Blue Card. It is issued by the Bursar's office. It's essentially a reloadable Visa card up to $300. We have this in place because we don't want personal finances to be a limit for an officer to join or participate in a club. A lot of the time people go spend their own money to get reimbursed. We understand that not every student is in the financial situation to go spend $300 of their own money and wait for a Zelle reimbursement. So this option is for them. They can submit this 2 weeks in advance, and the Bursar will issue this card to them. They go pick it up there. It never comes through OSI. But there is some added responsibility to this. They need to not lose the card, and they definitely need to not lose their receipts, because any receipts that are not returned to the Bursar will go to that student's personal Bursar fund, and no one wants to give the Bursar more money than they have to. So we do say, be very responsible with this card. Be quick, be timely, keep your receipts, take pictures of your receipts. Be very careful when you have the Focus Blue Card. Moving forward, so like I said, students do spend a lot of their own money that gets reimbursed through us. Anything that they're going to spend that's over $300, we ask this form gets submitted. This is kind of a stop checkpoint form to make sure, like, hey, do we really need to spend that much? Could we maybe put it on a P card so you're not, spending $1,000 of your own money? We don't. That's typically something we would advise against. It's also so a student doesn't put $1,000 on their mom's credit card and we get a call from the mom asking, "Hey, OSI, where's my money?" And we have to say, "I don't know," because that was not approved by us. But yeah, if it's over $300, make sure this form is submitted. Like it says at the bottom, it'll go to you first. So be on the lookout for those. And the last form that will be filled out is the reimbursement form. We do all our reimbursements through Zelle. Advisors can get reimbursed as well. It just goes in opposite direction. Instead of you approving it, the students approve it. So, it's both sides checking to make sure. But up to $300, we can reimburse through Zelle. It is, we like to bring it up now, especially this year, because Zelle has gotten a little bit more complicated. Zelle has sunset their standalone app. So if you think you have Zelle and it's through the app, you might not have Zelle anymore. It only goes through banks now. You have to check with your own bank. If you have a big national bank, US Bank, Chase, Fifth Third, that's through the app. They like through their own, like the Chase app has Zelle built into it, and that's how you set it up. But definitely check to make sure you have Zelle before you're requesting reimbursements, because if I send it and there's no Zelle account, it's just going to kind of float around and it's never going to go to anybody. And also make sure any Zelle purchases or purchases that you want reimbursed are tax exempt, or that sales tax will come out of your wallet. Unfortunately, because we are a tax exempt institution, we can't reimburse sales tax. Quick note, legal note, students do not have contract signature authority for the university. That's why they can, negotiate contracts, whatnot, for performers or whatever, but those go to us for us to sign the dotted line. I think there are some cases where faculty may have contract authority. We still like to know about contracts being signed, just so we're not aware of legal activity between the university and one of our orgs, and that we just don't know about. But generally speaking, don't have your students sign anything. They probably shouldn't be doing that. And I will hand it back over to Ray for further policies that are not financial.
Awesome. Thanks, Blake. Yeah, one other note too on the finance piece. If students are ever confused about the forms that they're filling out, we encourage them to just complete a form, get it in, get it approved. We can always redirect if it wasn't quite the right thing. We know it can be a little bit confusing for new officers. We also have a website on spending on our webpage that kind of talks through the different forms and their purposes. So if you all forget or students forget, we could direct them there all the time too. But you don't have to commit everything to memory right up front. Students will get used to the forms they use most often and know where to find them. So that's just one other caveat I'll give. The remainder of the presentation focuses on event and activity policies. So these might or might not sort of be relevant to your orgs and events that your officers want to hold this year. But this is kind of a quick high-level overview of some of the policies we're going to be covering throughout this next segment of the presentation. The first thing we want to iterate is that submitting events in EngageXU must happen typically at least 2 weeks in advance. Students can create an event and then it will immediately populate a follow-up form for them to submit that essentially talks through certain, check marks, things they need to be considerate of depending on where they want to hold the event, what type of event it is, and such. So there's a lot of logic built into these forms that's dictated by the boxes that they tick off and whether or not they need that, answered or whatnot. So the forms are very comprehensive. They're sort of meant to coach and guide the students along as they think about what event they want to have. We ask that they give as much detail as they can when they initially pitch an event or even like a meeting. This is for any general body meeting or any campus program. These have to be submitted as an event in EngageXU. We don't so much care whether or not the location is determined right away when this gets submitted. The most important thing is 2 weeks in advance. We know sometimes there could be spaces that are double booked or, still figuring some things out. So there's a place where students can say whether they've confirmed a space or they're waiting to hear back. That's all going to be baked into the event form. And then once they submit this too, it kicks to you as the advisor to approve that. As long as their submission date was 2 weeks at least from when they want to have the event, we give grace from when you all approve that and when we, move it along from there. There's been some confusion about that in the past. The other thing we wanted to just re-emphasize with students is that they need to be logging their attendance into Engage. So anytime they meet as a general body or have a program, we want them to figure out who's coming to their events so that it's reflective of their membership, which is actually active. So they can do this in a variety of ways. EngageXU makes it relatively easy. If they go old school with it and do paper pencil, that's fine, but we ask somebody to input that data into EngageXU. We pull that for lots of reports. We've also been telling students this is a great way to prove your worth to student government and ask for more money by saying we have X amount of people regularly attending our meetings and programs. So we just wanted to make sure that this requirement is really being taken seriously by students. In terms of reserving space, there's a few ways that students can do this. And the nice thing about our event in space form is that it actually kind of covers, or I guess points students in the direction of various methods for reserving space. So if they want to use the Gallagher Student Center, outdoor spaces, Justice Atrium, or the Hub, they can actually do that through Mazebo directly. They have full access as students to make a request and see if they can book any of those spaces. As long as it's for an approved event, the space should get approved just fine. However, if they want to use classroom academic space or even the Cintas Center, there's some different emails that they need to hit up for that. We have a long directory on our website with all of the different building managers and who to kind of contact to book which spaces and best practices there. We're going to cover this more in depth for our students at Academy this upcoming weekend, but we also wanted to give them the heads up that with campus transitioning, hopefully this upcoming semester to 25 Live and a centralized reservation platform, we know that students might have questions, so we're going to be accompanying them as we get to that point. But for now, students have a lot more authority on their space reservation, and we will keep that consistent for them. We also wanted to give a quick disclaimer about food trucks. Clubs don't bring food trucks all that often, but they certainly can. For instance, Buffalo Club did just this past week of Welcome. It can be quite costly, but also a really cool visual, a really cool display of the club's sort of presence on campus. What essentially would happen is your club would sponsor the food truck, so students aren't paying for the sale of food, right? We're not allowing vendors to just show up and sell their product. But if students want to get any food truck on campus, they need to let us know in advance so we can notify Chartwells and Campus Catering. We also only have certain locations that they can park, and we also need to get things like a mobile food license and certificate of insurance on file with risk management over in Flynn Hall. The other thing about this is if students want to get food for any meetings and they just do like drop and go catering service or order pizza, that's completely different. That's a lot less strenuous and often a lot less expensive too. So we do tell students if they're doing the food truck route, please go well in advance. They're also welcome to partner with us. We bring a food truck to campus every Friday, and we're always looking for groups that want to co-sponsor that with us. We don't even charge them for it. We just ask that they bring their members and help advertise for us. So it's a great way to really knock out a program and get some free publicity. Fundraising. This is something that we're really trying to push this year because we know students need to have some skin in the game to really care about what they can do with all the money that they have. And a lot of them want to make their club presence go a little further. So any type of fundraiser, which is basically just any collection of money or active fundraising effort, needs to be registered as an event in EngageXU. Typically at least 2 weeks in advance. This is anything from selling merchandise to collecting the dues, even working a concession stand to make some extra cash is meant to be registered as a fundraiser. It can count as an event, which is really nice, so students can kind of knock off multiple requirements. But just keep in mind they cannot sell homemade baked goods. They can't do like a bake sale unless it's commercially prepared items. And if they're raising money for a charity that is not their student organization, they need to be meticulous about really tracking those dollars, making sure that the donation gets made and that they're not leaving money on the table. EngageXU makes it relatively easy to do a storefront if they're looking to make money from fellow Xavier students or people with Xavier emails. So that is one option. We can sit down with your officers and cook that up with them. But we do want to make it clear that they cannot donate any money that they currently have in their accounts. They can't take student activity fee dollars and give them to a charity of their choice, or give them to a student scholarship, or have a presidential stipend. That's not acceptable use of funding. So they need to actually find a way to make that money on their own. That being said, we have launched a fundraising page this year on our OSI website to really go in more depth about ideas for students, things that they want to consider about fundraising, how to register that. So we encourage them to check that out. Any money that they fundraise can roll over from one year to the next. So it really positions them well for longevity and gives them some extra wiggle room when it comes to spending policies. When it comes to student invited speakers, this is what we consider anyone who's not Xavier faculty, staff, or student that's going to speak to a group of students on campus. If students want to bring a guest speaker to campus, even somebody from, let's say, UC's campus, whether it's a fellow student or a colleague of yours, they need to register this in advance so that our team can review who the speaker is, what they're going to be covering, what organizations they represent, and so on. We want this to be all very clearly articulated up front so we can really assess what kind of audience this will attract and how the university can best prepare. We also just want to keep in mind that active political candidates who are running for office cannot set foot on Xavier's campus. Therefore, we also wanted to go over our political activities policy. Since the university is designated as a nonprofit with the IRS, we have to be viewed as nonpartisan and apolitical. So student orgs, we have many of which that are politically active, which is wonderful, but they do things like lobbying off campus, even letter writing campaigns, great. If they're doing any kind of voter registration, that has to be nonpartisan. So for instance, we have an upcoming event with the League of Women Voters on campus, and that is going to be a nonpartisan way to register students to vote, but not telling them how to vote or who to vote for. We work closely with Sean Riney in the Office of Government Relations to just make sure we're doing everything by the books here, making sure that our political policies are in alignment with best practice. In terms of our student alcohol event policy, really anytime students want to host an event where alcohol will be served, this could be, a gala, a formal, a dance, they need to meet with Dustin Lewis first to go over some considerations about risk and funding, because there's a lot of things that we want to make sure that they're thinking through. How much is this going to cost? Where is the event taking place and how will students get there? And so forth. There is a policy on campus that allows for students to have alcohol events, provided that that's not the main focus of the event. Whether it's on or off campus, students can go this route if they choose, but they need a lot of lead time to prepare. We also know that if they're having an event on campus, they have to use Chartwell's for the bar service because Chartwell's holds the liquor license for Xavier University. Motion picture copyright is another fun legal thing we want to emphasize with our students. Unfortunately, student clubs cannot show major motion pictures or TV shows without first purchasing and licensing the rights to those films. Whereas maybe if you're an instructor for a course, you can show a movie as long as it's part of your syllabus as educational. Student orgs do not have the same rights for that, even if they have a faculty advisor. So the only real workarounds to this, other than paying for the rights directly, are any title they can stream directly from Netflix as an original documentary, must be original documentaries Netflix created, or anything they can find on Canopy, which is the library's streaming platform. Otherwise, they may shell out hundreds of dollars to get a film shipped from Swank or Criterion, but we often recommend students just go off campus to the movies if they want to see a movie together and bond. Film and TV Club, maybe they want to go see a new movie out in theaters. It may be a lot cheaper to actually make it an outing, and we are very supportive of that as a good use of their funding. Brand use, promotional material, and apparel. Anytime that students want to use the X or Xavier University logos, or even produce any merchandise whatsoever, they need to get prior approval from Kim Costanza in the Markham office. We want to make sure that this is really top of mind for students as they think about their designs, as they prepare a quote for that order. We want to give students ample notice about this because we know they love to get good merchandise that's customized for their group, or maybe their board gets new merchandise every year. So just keeping that in mind, using one of our 3 vendors, we're still working with SmartCat, Consolidus, and Distinct Images. So students are well aware of these policies. This isn't changed from last year, but just being mindful that anytime they're using that X, it's going to get reviewed in EngageXU and Xavier BY. Students can also create their own promotions for free or relatively inexpensive. There's 2 maker spaces in the library that student orgs can use. One is by appointment, the other is drop in, but there's all kinds of supplies you see here that they can just have first right of refusal over as long as they take care of the equipment and clean up. Students can also access our competitive pricing through FedEx Home Office and do high volume copying in color, in black and white. They could do handbills, they could do banners, they can hang things in Gallagher. Any of that can be produced professionally and they get a nice discount on that. They can charge it to their club fund number. They don't even have to pay for shipping or tax. So these are great ways to really stretch their dollar if they want to get the word out about their organization. Student domestic travel is defined as any trip over 35 miles from campus or an overnight stay, regardless of the distance from XU. These need to be submitted 3 weeks in advance at least, rather than 2 weeks, because we need more lead time to assess who's traveling, who's chaperoning, what are the emergency contacts, and so on. We want to make sure that also students are thinking about price gouging when it comes to booking their hotels and how are they getting around town wherever they're going, whether it's for a conference, a competition, a pleasure trip, regardless of what it is. We want to make sure students have enough lead time and meet with us to assess their risk for the trip at hand. The kind of flip side to this is a little bit more low stakes, and that's off-campus activities. So anytime students are leaving Xavier's campus proper, but not staying overnight somewhere, and they're staying within the greater Cincinnati region, that 35-mile kind of threshold, students just need to register that as off-campus. This could be anything from walking on Wasson Way to shopping at Jungle Gyms, or even going to a Reds game. We love to see this. For instance, Outdoor Club here did a wonderful outing last winter to rock climbing. Just keeping in mind that we will still assess their risk level based on activities they'll be performing and if they need to do any additional paperwork like waivers. Otherwise, this is a great way for students to really bond off campus and, spend that money that they have at their discretion. We also just wanted to reiterate with you all and students that Ohio has very stringent anti-hazing policies and laws. We're all mandated to report this, and we're all working together to stop hazing and make sure students are aware of what hazing can look like. It can take many forms, but it does happen on every campus, so being mindful and speaking up if something seems suspicious. Students are not allowed to gamble for money on campus, so no sports betting programs or split the pot, any kind of money collection when it comes to that. We just don't want to get into any sort of legal mess there. And the end of campus programming date is always the last Friday before final exams begin. So this fall, that's Friday, December 5th. It's also the Crosstown Shootout this year for Xavier's campus, which is exciting. So students need to plan ahead before they reach that deadline to make sure they've met all their programming requirements. We want students to be able to focus on their exams, right? Their student organizations, students first, being mindful of that, getting ahead of it now. That's why we share this deadline very early on in the semester. Now I'm going to briefly cover our baseline program, which is how we track really the progress of student orgs and clubs throughout the year, making sure that they're doing things in a timely fashion and making good on their investment too. We've kind of retooled some of this year to make it easier for students and also more streamlined. So the first thing that we want to iterate is that meetings must happen on a regular basis between student orgs and their general bodies. We're going to be designating each student organization with a tier from tier 1 to tier 4 this year. Basically, student orgs will get a message from our office explaining what this means, but tier 1 groups are groups that have received the most funding and have consistently had that most resourcing, whereas tier 4 groups might have less money and might be required to do a bit less with it. So these amounts have already been decided. by student government in years past, and we're trying to make it a little bit more equitable what we expect students to do with that money. So these tiers will dictate how many times the clubs need to meet each semester, as well as how often they need to meet with you as the advisor. For meetings, in the past, we've asked students to submit an agenda as a separate form. Now we're just going to ask that they create the event and track attendance. We're eliminating the form to capture their meetings. We are, however, keeping a form for advisor meeting agenda summaries. So just on a monthly basis, if a student org officer could recap their meeting with you, we would appreciate having that to track their progress on that. We also want students to really take an ownership over their groups. So fundraising is a big push this year. We want them to think about how they're raising funds, whether they're going to raise funds, even before we hit like March Gladness and the heat of really the fundraising season. Some groups might be asked to fundraise or required. If they are given more money, we're going to ask them to find a way to also have some skin in the game. But we also know that it benefits all of them to fundraise, regardless of whether they're asked to do it or not. In terms of training, we always we always give as much notice as we can to try and ask officers to attend required trainings and workshops. This year, we're going to have some optional and some required based on sort of what tier your group gets assigned, which the tiers are coming very shortly. We just didn't want to lead with inaccurate information for you all or for the students. The other components of baseline, each org is required to do a set amount of programs each semester. These are designated for the whole campus. They could be anything from a week of welcome event to a pop-up, food truck or something like that. These have to also be submitted as events in Engage XU. We also are consistently continuing to ask each org to do a service project. This can be a program as well, so it's kind of nice. They can double count a lot of these requirements. But since we are a Jesuit Catholic institution, we want to make sure students are really taking the charge with service and giving back to the community. So we help them reach that. They can do Community Action Day. They don't have to reinvent the wheel here, but we do want them to be as involved in service as they can be with as many members as possible. And then lastly, yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just had a quick question.
Sure thing.
At the fundraisers, we're allowed to donate, right?
Yes, correct.
Okay, great.
Yep. Correct. Any money that you all give to the group and students give to the group, whether it's dues, whether it's just during March Gladness, that money is the club's to spend. It can be deposited directly into their accounting book, and they can spend it in any fiscal year. So that is really the one benefit of fundraising, one of the many, is that there's less strings attached to that money, and it's not subject to being recaptured. Which I guess that leads me to the last point here, which is that students are expected to really spend all of the money that they get from SGA in a given year, because we are, really asking that the money that they don't spend is subject to being recaptured because they should be pitching in their own money too. So any money that they leave unspent, if it's less than the amount that they spent throughout the year, that money might get taken back. But any money that they put into the group or that you put into the group or that they generate through fundraise dollars will not be recaptured. That money is theirs to keep year over year, which is why it helps with their longevity. So we just want students to be mindful that the money that they got in August is what they have for both semesters. If they want to supplement with more money, we are very supportive of that. We know many of them have big plans for the year ahead. But also knowing that if they don't spend all that money, we don't want that to be a problem either. So it's subject to recapture as well. Okay. Does that cover all of our bases for baseline? I know that's sort of a high-level overview here, but we get a lot of questions about this policy.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, great. Well, that about does it for us. I'm going to stop sharing my screen and stop the recording here, but I'll open up the floor for any questions that the group might have.
I just want to make sure baseline is still not